Jean-Philippe, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Antoine. Nice to meet you, and looking forward to the conversation.
Jean-Philippe, you graduated in 2021, and immediately after that, you started your own company. Now, you did a bunch of internships during university. So I want to understand, how does someone finish university and immediately jump into starting their own company? Can you give us a bit of a background?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think it's worth noting that I was in a fairly, privileged position to do so. Basically, because of a range of factors, I had enough savings that I could afford to not pay myself for a little while, which, not everybody is in that position. So, that's one thing that's worth acknowledging. And then
Mhm.
I guess in terms of the sort of skill set that it takes to do that, it would obviously depend on what company you start. In my case, I decided to start a software development agency, and I had the tools and the skills to do so because, as you said, I I completed like a couple internships before. So I worked at RBC and I worked at Amazon, as a, both in software engineering internship positions. And so that, along with, doing a Bachelor of Computer Science and working on a bunch of side projects and stuff, gave me enough of a background to have the confidence to say, okay, if I have a, client that comes to me and wants to develop some software, I feel pretty confident that I can do that for them.
Was it the plan from the beginning? Did you know that you were going to end up opening something of your own?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, basically from when I was a kid, that was my dream. Like I always just wanted to own my own business, and I think, my mind is sort of wired that way. And in fact, in 2019, I tried to start a very similar company with a friend of mine. Noah, if you
Yeah.
if you see this, you'll have good memories of this. Also in Toronto, and also a software development agency, and that was, our sort of first, the trial beginnings of that. And, it didn't really last because we had to complete our studies and our internships and stuff. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, it was, I mean, I was really kind of eager to start a business for sure.
And you said you always wanted to start your own business. Is it because there's someone in your family who's an entrepreneur? Is someone close to you have their own business? Where does this come from?
Yeah, I mean, my dad's and sort of his dad, who I never really knew, but started a business, a family business. And then my dad and his brother, were running it when I was a kid. And so I think that did impact me, seeing my dad being entrepreneurial and all of that. And he's also, a business professor, and so I think that also wired my brain for business a little bit. But overall, I think the sort of key thing that always attracted me is that, it's a pretty core goal of mine to try and gain my freedom in life. So I think it's, obviously probably money doesn't bring people all the happiness and things like that, but I think it's sort of an interesting thought experiment to say, well, if money were not an object, if money were no object, then what would I spend my time doing? And I'm not there yet, but I think the only sort of way to get there is to try to gain, financial independence or freedom. And I personally sort of identified building businesses as the best way to do so. And yeah, also for some reason, it's just something that I would walk around and look at different businesses and kind of think about them, think about the prices and things like that. So there's also kind of something that's not explainable to it, that I just, my brain's like wired that way. Some people are wired for music and things like that. So yeah.
Mm. So two things come to my mind. So first, attempted to start a similar company with one of your friends back when you were still in university, and
Hmm.
also you did these two internships, which I think both together are about a year, 8 month, 4 month, something like that.
Yeah.
So, how do you think these two experiences impacted your ability to run your business today?
Yeah. So I guess, you know, yeah, so there's two things. There's the prior company and the internships. So let's start with the internships.
Hmm.
What the internships really gave me is, or are, what the internships really gave me is a lot of technical knowledge. So, my first internship, I was working for 8 months at RBC. And over there, I was a web developer. And so, that team over there exposed me to really the basic, concepts of web development and showed me what it's like to work in a team and actually commit code to production. And we were working in Vue.js and a bunch of different like web frameworks and things like that. Which before that I had done 2 years of studies of computer science, but you don't really get exposure to the tangible what it means to tangibly build a web application or a web product. So a lot of technical knowledge there. And then when I was working at Amazon, I was working on something called EC2 autoscaling. So, for those who are familiar with EC2, it's basically the idea is just that um, um, you would adapt the compute capacity of a given system based on how much demand it currently has. So over there, it was a lot of backend work. I was working in Java a lot, and likewise, I think that gave me not only technical ability but also probably a decent amount of credibility with potential clients. Because if you approach a client and you haven't done any internships or you have no experience, it's a little more difficult, I think, as a sale. But having that background gave me some credibility as well as some technical skills. And then in terms of the company that I ran before, so that was in 2019, so a couple of years before I started, the current company that I run. That actually was very informative because at the end of the day, if somebody is interested in doing business, you just have to get to it, right? You just have to take the jump and take the leap and do it. And that's really how you're going to learn. And I learned a lot in 2019 by doing that. So first of all, we made tons of mistakes. Honestly, at some point we accidentally deleted our client's database and stuff. So I mean, honestly, we could tell those stories and kind of have a good laugh and stuff. And obviously, this is it wasn't funny in the moment, and
Yeah.
we're very careful
Mm.
with our clients infrastructure and stuff. So it's not like we're reckless, but back then uh, we didn't really know what we were doing, and we accidentally did do that. So that was a good lesson. And then also there were a lot of lessons in selling there because you have to try and find clients when you start an agency. So that was also something that I learned a lot about the kind of sales parts.
Yeah.
And lastly, I think a pretty key a pretty key takeaway that I have from that experience is that back then we decided to start as sort of a partnership. So we just did 50-50 on the company. We didn't even incorporate or anything, but we basically said, hey, let's just get in business together, do this 50-50 endeavor. And that also taught me a lot about what it means to have a co-founder. And it's tricky, right? So my current company, there's one founder and one owner, which is me. And that gives me a lot of freedom to kind of move quickly. And so yeah, all there's probably a lot of other learnings that I kind of internalized that I'm something else I used to do back then a lot that just way too much is just put way too much on my plate. And so I think and then that has consequences, right? Because then you can't deliver on the things that you promised you do because you just have too much going on and stuff. And that was something that I used to do quite a bit.
Hmm.
So most of the things I'm describing here are things that in the moment hurt, right? Those were kind of painful lessons to learn, but probably I'm carrying them, every day of my business life. I'm carrying these lessons that were kind of painful and
Mm.
also a lot of good stuff. I mean, we were able to find a client despite being, a couple of 20-year-old kids and things like that. So also a lot of positive lessons as well.
Mm. It's amazing. You touched on so many great points. I think one of the key one, which is when you were doing those internships, you had like one specific jobs, for example, a web developer in RBC. But when you're running your own company, you have to know how to do sales, marketing, and all these different hats that you need to put on. And almost everyone who's running a successful business had this similar story about how they started their first business. And they don't usually say that they've made some mistake. They usually say they did all the mistakes when it comes to the co-founders, how to run the business, like all of them. So I want to maybe ask you a bit about the companies you interned at. some people would dream about working at Amazon. Did you at any point think that maybe I should keep on the corporate route, or were you determined on starting your own business even back then?
Well, um, yeah, I remember. So this is about 4 years ago now. So I'm trying to, go back into the mindset that I was in it and everything. And I remember sort of the day that I was graduating university was coming up closer and closer.
Mhm.
And, sort of the next logical step is to start applying for full-time positions, so just apply, apply, apply. And honestly, for some reason, I was kind of procrastinating doing that. So I was like, okay, I still have a lot of work to finish here with my university, so I'm going to do that. And I just didn't really start on that. And then I think there was a point where probably I had a conversation with my brother. I have an older brother, and I value his opinions a lot and feedback. And I think there was a point where I realized, well, if I'm gonna try to start a company and all of that, this is probably the right time because I was in a decent position financially. I was very young. I was 21 years old, so um yeah, I don't remember exactly the question you asked me, but oh yeah, like did
Did
you
you ever
consider the corporate routes?
reconsider?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, it is an attractive opportunity, right? When you just graduate with a Bachelor of Computer Science, you can command a pretty decent salary, especially as a 21, 22-year-old. It's quite
Hmm.
valuable to work in corporate. So yes, I did consider it, but at the end of the day, my goal and my dream is to, you know, be in business for myself. So I think for me, if I were to just work in a corporate job, of course, it could be part of a greater strategy. Either I'm going to save a bunch of money or something
Hmm.
like, or learn a lot, build myself a network or something like that. But regardless, there's a degree of procrastination to that because it's like a tangible path to what I truly would like to do. And
Hmm.
that's a bit of a shame, right? If you just spend too much time on this tangible path. So obviously, if I ever apply for a corporate position and this interview comes up, it's gonna go right back in my face, but it doesn't matter. It's the truth. So with this being said, I think my alternative path, had I not done what I'm doing right now, my alternative path was to try and grind out like 6 or 7 years of like the highest salary I could find in corporate, save as much money as I can, gain financial freedom to where I can pay for a humble lifestyle with investment. So 4% withdrawal rule and fire movement and all of that.
Hmm.
And then start a business. So that was I really truly considered doing that, and I think it would have been a pretty decent option as well. But yeah, I mean, corporate is interesting too.
Awesome. So you would have probably ended up opening your own place anyways. So,
I hope so.
um, Jean-Philippe, let's talk a bit about the company you're building. Talk to us a bit about what it is, what are the services that you provide, and maybe start from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, it's pretty straightforward. We're a custom software development company.
Mm.
So, we're a B2B service. So the service we provide is for other businesses, not, for everyday consumers. And it's quite straightforward. So let's say that you run a company and you have a team of, I don't know, let's say 20 people, for example, or 15 people. And, you know, those companies usually need some type of custom software built. So either they'll need a fully customized software solution. So that's some of our clients. So in that case, you know, we come in and so for example, let's say you're my client, you come to me and you say, okay, so I really need a platform where, all my employees can log in and based on their different roles, they can do different things and for example, manage orders. Let's say you're a manufacturing company, maybe some of your employees need to have access to some part of the platform while others don't. This type of thing. So that's basically called an ERP, right? So some companies need a custom ERP, and that's what we do, right? We build custom internal platforms and business applications for companies. We also so that's kind of one segment. We also work with startups, right? So few of our clients are startups and came to us and said, okay, I have this idea for a new software product and I'd like you to build it. And that's been a very interesting vertical as well. And yeah, again, in that case, it's the exact same idea, right? So our client will, describe to us the vision, describe to us a lot of times the features that they want, etc. And then we provide. It all depends on where they want us to start, but we're an A to Z software development company, which means we help people from the ideation stage where you just kind of know what you want to build, but you don't know what it's going to look
Mm,
like or what the features will be, all the way through to deployment and maintenance. And so that includes UI UX design, which I'm personally not good at, but I hire people to do it. That includes development, which is my background, but I also hire people to do it, and then hosting, deployments, etc. So yeah, that's really what we do. And the sort of specialization that I think I'm trying to take the company in, at least part of the company's activity, maybe not the whole thing, but is working with nonprofits. And there's a specific system called CVCRM, which I've sort of noticed. I think there's quite a few organizations. There's 11,000 organizations using it, and I'm sort of noticing that there's a bit of a skill gap in the market where I'm not really sure there's enough companies providing services that are based on the specific system. So the kind of next step for us, I think, is to try to specialize in this kind of niche of servicing nonprofits, and there's also government entities and other types of entities using this thing called CVCRM. But it's not all we do, but it's kind of the marketing direction that I'm trying to take the business in.
mm.
Hopefully that makes sense. It was a bit long-winded, but
No, there's just a lot to unpack. So first you said that well, you handle a broad range of clients, and you touched a bit on the fact that you're like A to Z solution. So usually do people come to you with knowing exactly what they want, or do you have a lot of the consulting about based on their capacity, this is what you would recommend? Like, how do your interaction with the clients usually go?
yeah. So it really depends because, as you pointed out, we have a pretty wide range of clients. I mean, one of the things we even do is just white labeling for other agencies, right? So sometimes you'll have a bigger agency. One of my clients, one of my long-term clients is like a bigger agency, and then they're just kind of subcontracting us a part of the work every month that they have. And in that case, really what we're doing is almost kind of like staff augmentation, right? So we're just really providing software engineering capacity for them. And my role in this case is to just find really good software engineers, which I think is probably interviewing, recruiting, and hiring is like I think a pretty something I'm really good at. So that's worked well. So in that case, to answer your question, the client will be I mean, completely, it's very much, we're just being told what features to build, right? Which is perfectly fine. And then for the more kind of startup type clients, or the ones where we have a bit of a more direct working relationship with the end stakeholder, in that case, most of the time, the client will have a pretty good idea of what they want. It depends where they come in, but if they've already a lot of times these startups have already kind of thought about what it is they want, what kind of interactions the customer would have or would do on the product, etc. And in that case, usually the consulting we do is like helping them sort of wrangle their vision in a way that's feasible, and in a way that's because it's important to have to keep in mind the technical. In that case, my role as sort of the fractional CTO, you could call it, is to say, okay, client X or client Y, you may not want to go that direction because it's going to be a lot of software engineering effort for maybe not that much impact. So a lot of times that's kind of what we do, and we help them, navigate their vision. But most of our clients already have a pretty well-defined vision.
Mm.
Yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, and did you know that you wanted to go B2B from the beginning? Did you know that this was the right path for you, or did you consider going directly to customers?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, it's a good question. Exactly. So once you know that you want to start a business, the question is what kind of business, right? So that's right. So I remember, I grew up in a place called Fontainebleau, and I was taking a lot of walks. There's a big, beautiful forest there. And after I graduated university, I was taking a lot of walks trying to figure out, my next moves in life. And back then I had two kind of competing ideas. I mean, I always have like a big list of business ideas that I could potentially build. But I had two competing ideas, and the other one was B2C actually. So it's kind of interesting to discuss it. The B2C idea was, I think my idea was that when people when people get a parcel delivered, like a package delivered, um, if you're not at home when the delivery person comes, then becomes a bit of a pain in the butt to try and pick it up, right? So it kind of depends, but if it's like a larger parcel, then you might have to, go out. And I know for me, when I was in France, it kind of kept me from ordering things online because I was like, okay, I'm not going to be home. This is going to go to somewhere I can't pick it up. I didn't have a car and stuff. So I was thinking like, okay, you could, very simply have like a warehouse somewhere where kind of like you could order, tell them to deliver your parcel right now when you're at home. When it's so you would basically give, let's say, Amazon my company's address. They would deliver it to us, and then when the person wants the delivery, you'd click on a button and say, "Hey, deliver it to me now," and then you would see on your phone like an Uber style map where you would see the little delivery car come to your house, and it would be a lot more kind of tangible of a
Mm,
delivery experience. That was my idea. But the for me, I'm a lot more interested in things that are I want to have. So I think it's Alex Hormozy who talks about that, but I want to have I at least at this stage in my life, I like execution risk a lot more than I like idea risk. So with this company that I described, this delivery company or whatever, there's a lot of idea risk, right? So you don't really know if you're going to have some product market fit. You don't really know if the market is going to like that idea. You could very well spend 12 to 18 months, stumbling and just trying to, and that's the difficulty with startups, right? And that's kind of why I personally chose not to do. I have plenty of friends who are my age and just as ambitious and stuff who chose to go into the startup routes. But for me, what I like is that I can see that there's plenty of software engineering companies around, and you know not all of them are huge, but at least there's clearly a pretty big established market. So for me, when I get up in the morning, I find it a lot more motivating to try and think, okay, how can I just go compete with those companies and take a little share of the market, and it's also a growing market, so you don't have to steal necessarily business from competitors, although sometimes we do, I guess. It excites me a lot more to just try and work within a red ocean or established market, because I don't want to spend 2 years of my life trying to work on an idea, all to discover that, well, there's not really such a good fit or something. I mean, when you look at the startup statistics, it's tough, right? Even the companies that get funded by, say, Y Combinator, a
mhm.
small percentage of them end up making significant money for the founders. So I'd rather go for the sure thing. Another inspiration of mine on that front is a guy called Nick Huber, who sort of made his money in very traditional businesses, and so that excites me more. And to just get bring it back to your question briefly, you could do a B2C company that still fits my mental model of the sure thing or whatever, even though nothing's ever sure. But it's more rare. I think the best way for a young person like me who wants to start a business to try and make the first few millions, basically, of money is to say, hey, I'm going to do a B2B service, something boring or something like that. And that's going to, get to some base of, I mean, if you think about it, most employees, salaried employees, are really B2B service people. So that's kind of like where most of our economy. I live in Toronto, you live in Montreal. Most of our economy is, tertiary sector, right? We're all kind of B2B services people. So just trying to scale that, you know.
Mm. That's very interesting, and I want I want to ask you, since you have such a broad range of clients and you have the ability to start projects from scratch, do you sometimes reject clients? Because, like you said, you, for example, you said that you have a lot of ideas, and I'm sure you've heard, there's this joke around that, like, I always have $1 billion idea. All I need is a tech guy to build it for me. So, do you sometimes have these like very strange projects that just cannot take or cannot accept by clients?
Yeah, so every once in a while, somebody will approach us and offer equity for development, right? So they'll kind of do what you're describing here, which is, hey, I have this brilliant idea. I just need some tech people to build it. And how about I give you, some equity, and in exchange you build the thing. Now, I've always said no to that because it's a huge risk for me, right? I have to pay my team to build this person's project, and what if it doesn't pan out? Now I'm in the hole, right? So
Mm.
yeah, so basically when you ask, have you ever rejected a client or something like that? The answer is every time I've been offered to do equity for development, I've always said no. But I mean, if you have an idea that's kind of out there and you want to, pay me and my team some cash to build it, why would I say no? Of course, I'm going to say yes. And you're the one who's taking on the risk. It's much like being an employee at a startup. A lot of times they get equity, but and you get a big salary. I mean, yeah, it kind of sucks if the startup doesn't work out, but the risk is on the founder, right?
Yeah.
That's to answer that. And then the other thing that I really try to do is uh, I try to only work with clients. So even going beyond the kind of equity thing, I try to only work with clients with whom I can kind of intuitively tell that there's going to be a positive working relationship. So I would pass up. It's just my personality, but I think I would pass up quite a bit of potential upside to just not work with assholes. So yeah, that's just kind of I've built that from personal experience and things like that.
Mm.
But I don't like my life when I'm working with some people that I don't enjoy.
Yeah.
It just stresses me out every day. I'd rather keep a humble lifestyle and have some clients who are happy.
Mm.
And right now it's great because we have a small base of clients and all of them are super respectful, super happy, positive people. And I mean, my life is like really nice, right? Of course,
Mm.
I work a lot and there's some
Yeah.
stress because we have to meet deadlines and things like that. But it's pretty imperative for me not to be dealing with abusive people on a daily basis because that kind of eats away at your confidence, I think.
Yeah. And projects are not short, right? Like you're gonna have to spend weeks, months.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to get back to the competitiveness of the market. You said it is a competitive market, but you enjoy a competitive market because there's a lot of market share to go around, and you're just trying to get your piece and grow it with time. So how do you differentiate yourself from all these different people? And are you trying to get into a specific industry or grow into a specific niche, or are you still figuring things out? You did mention nonprofits earlier on, but uh, how how do you approach all this? Because there are so many different companies that do
Yep.
software development. So how do you approach this? How do you think about this?
Absolutely. So the answer is that I haven't found a good solution for this yet. So that's the answer is that, so far I've started the company, it's been about 4 years. And, in terms of revenue, we're in the range of like I'll just say, 150 to let's say $500,000 a year of revenue, just so people can kind of get an idea, right? And that's a decent amount of success. Of course, it's not nothing, but it also shows you that there hasn't been like kind of like a
Exponential.
yeah, like a really extraordinary amount of explosive growth or something. And I think that comes from uh doing something that having like a very specific differentiator that where you can put a specific offer that's really interesting in front of the right prospect. And that's what I'm trying to work on now because so far I've outcompeted, I guess, other companies by I mean, we have 5 values that I wrote down on our website. Honestly, I'm not sure I can remember all of them by heart, but the idea is to have, really high quality, right? Because there's lots of software development companies and not all of them will provide you with really high quality service. I mean, most of the clients that I work with have worked with other companies or other developers before. And so a lot of times they were just not happy with the quality of things that came out because in software it's quite common that you ask a developer to do a task and they or a company, an agency, they get back to you and you look at it, you click around, it's just kind of shitty, right? Like it's just not the quality you expect and you're not happy with that. So we compete on that front. We have good quality at a pretty reasonable price because we're still small. But that's obviously not enough, right? Because there are also other companies that can do good quality work for a decent price. And so, which is why right now, to kind of expand a little bit on the thing I was saying earlier with the niche. Right now, I'm trying to develop that CVCRM expertise. So that's a specific open source product that's used by a bunch of NGOs and things like that. And I think if I build this specific expertise and just kind of, I'm trying to put out some articles, put out some YouTube videos about this thing, and just gain some thought leadership or something like that about that. I think we might be able to, reach that kind of, okay, this is like a significant differentiator for this specific company, a really good reason why we would work with them rather than another one. But to answer your question, it's a real difficulty. So,
Mm.
yeah.
I really appreciate the honesty here, Jean-Philippe. And do you serve the Canadian market only, or do you serve anyone? Because
Yeah, we
since you're
serve
just,
anyone. We serve anyone. So, I mean, actually, interestingly, in the beginning, all of our revenue came from Canada. And then in 2024, I think I'm trying to do mental math here, but probably like 20 or 25% of our revenue came from Canada only. So, and
wow.
that's not by choice. It's just, I mean, at the end of the day, as a service company, we get the business that we can get our hands on, right? So right
Mm.
now we have clients from 4 different countries. We have Canada, US, Belgium, and UK. And it's just kind of how it's happened. But we're happy to work with people from any country. And I'm obviously bilingual too. So we actually work in French and in English. There are some clients with whom we work in French, which is quite enjoyable too. So
I want to close with this. If someone has an idea and they're looking for a software development company, what would you tell them?
um well, I would tell them to just get in touch with us, right? So yeah, I guess, yeah. So that is, all jokes aside, that is what I would tell them is if you're interested in building some software, so whether you have a new idea or maybe you have a platform that's outdated, or you need a new developer, you're not quite happy with the work that was done before, you want to try something new, you can reach out to us. So the domain name of our website is North, like the North, and then P like proud, N like normal, D like Daniel.com. So that's northpnd.com. And my email address is J like John, P like Philip at northpnd.com. So JP at northpnd.com. So you can reach out to me if you're interested in building some software. But just to go a little bit beyond that obvious suggestion, it's, I think, yeah, like that's kind of what you want to do. You want to reach out to some companies and try and listen to what they're telling you and be critical. So it's kind of like if you want to work with an accounting firm and you want to build a long-term relationship, maybe you want to ask two or three of them and listen. I think it's important to look a little bit beyond the price too, right? So let's say that I'm in competition with let's say that you have an idea for a software and you reach out to me and also to one of my competitors and you get a quote that's 50% cheaper from somebody else. You have to really think this through, because with this type of project with software, it's very possible to go with the wrong provider and end up just completely wasting your budget. And that's
Mm.
a real shame, right? So, in Toronto, sometimes we see condo buildings that kind of go belly up and are rebought by other developers and things like that. And that's obviously a pretty bad situation, but most of the time you don't have to destroy the whole thing and rebuild it again, right? But
Mhm.
that can happen if you go with a developer that doesn't quite have the skills to do what you're trying to do. So try to be critical about what you're being sold on. I think that's a pretty key component. Yeah,
Mhm.
especially there's a lot of hype around AI right now, and a lot of companies will promise you a lot of things. Sure, your product will be able to do this and that, and it's like you have to just be critical. So that would be my
Mhm.
suggestion. And also, if you're working with a decent provider, I guess, so that's something we do. uh, these companies, these software development companies, should be willing, we are, to invest, some hours up front to try and help you along the journey. So whether that's with a good estimate or evaluating some other providers that you're considering or something like that, because the contracts are pretty large, right? So
Yeah.
all these companies should be willing to invest some effort into that initial relationship. So yeah, those would be my suggestions, I guess.
Mm. Jean-Philippe, thank you so much for your time. This was a very insightful conversation.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Antoine. Thanks for having me on, and really, really enjoyed being able to chat about what I do. Thanks a lot.
Awesome.